I've lived and worked in Beijing for 40 years, over 40 years, and I have never seen it so bad in recent months. The air was bad. I could even smell and feel the grit when it was very bad. And it's not just Beijing. We know that many other cities have suffered from bad air days. Harbin most recently. And it's not just air. It's also water. Water is scarce. Water is polluted. Food is contaminated. And people are, of course, unhappy. With this single-minded drive for modernization and urbanization in China, and for globalization around the world, one of the critical issues that we all face is how to find a smart and sustainable way to nourish, to house, transport, give power and care for our peoples. How do we sustainably manage our energy, our food, water, and other finite resources while protecting and improving our environment? What is the role of governments, enterprises, NGOs, individuals in the design and implementation of solutions to these challenges? How do we manage the unintended consequences of modernization and urbanization and globalization? These are very big and complex topics. So what we can only do is to try to hit a few major points. And today we have put together a panel of experts and stakeholders to help us flesh out these very complex issues. And I will open the floor later to questions, but before I do that, I'd like to ask and have a conversation with our panelists. And I'll start with Wang Tao. Just how bad really is the situation, or is it just an alarmist hype by foreign journalists who want to create trouble?
Well, thank you. I think this situation is actually very bad, but also unfortunately we probably will see this worsen in the next few years before we actually will be able to turn it around. Mm-hmm. And the reason being that China is actually facing a crossroad in the development. And a lot we have seen today is actually a result of accumulation of the investment in the heavy industries, in the dirty industries, and also because of the lack of implementations of some of the policies. And a lot of that investment are already been made recently. And also the city's been planned and buildings been built and people located very far away from where they work. So people will not have much choice in the short term to really turn this around. And I have no doubt that the Chinese government has a strong willingness and commitment to make this better and to improve it. And you can see how much they have already promised to invest. I mean, Beijing itself promised to invest billions, trillions actually, RMB to improve the air quality. But things is not that easy to be changed around.
And so, one reason is because of the energy mix in China, right? China still relies on...
Energy mix in China, but also because of the heavy industries surrounding Beijing, like Inner Mongolia, Shanxi, and Hebei, Shandong province. They have invested heavily over the last few years in the dirty industries, in the coal, chemical, and coal industries. Those are new investments. You can't just ask them to throw away, because that is a huge waste, and investors will not be happy to see that. But also, Beijing is so vast in terms of the distance, and people traveling 50 kilometers a day one way to work is not such a surprising thing to hear, and they have to rely on the car sometimes, and that also causes huge problems. So we also have to keep seeing people driving more and more, unless we actually find a good ways to actually moving them from the driving private cars to the public transportation and charge them for the cost they call.
Do you drive a car?
I have a car, but I never drive to work. I only use it for the weekends.
How about you, Lu Zhi? Do you drive a car?
I have a car. I have a hybrid.
You have a hybrid.
Yeah.
So the energy mix, as I was referring to, China has always been addicted to intensive use of non-renewable energy like coal. Is that the reason, do you think?
It has a historical trajectory that one cannot change overnight, for sure. But on the other hand, I think actually there is a lot of room for saving energy by changing behavior, improving management. Mm-hmm. One thing, just improving the air conditioner and refrigerator saved the electricity of 5 Three Gorge dams.
5 Three
So
Gorges
there's a
dams.
lot of room to do that.
If everyone
If everyone does
that.
change a little bit, not a lot, it's a
Right.
little bit. So talking about the energy mix, people often don't we see the air pollution, we see the water pollution, and one thing people don't always think about is the nature. What actually offers the clean air, clean water, generate the clean air, the clean water, the source, which is the ecosystem. One thing, I'll give you an example. The Yangtze River has been dammed all the way through. And the result of that is not only the extinction of species, but all the whole entire ecosystem. And the trade-off was to provide like Three Gorge dams and other large dams to provide electricity. However, the irony is the hydropower is seasonal. It fluctuates greatly, and to make up that downturn, fossil fuel power plant was introduced to make it flat, make the great
make
flat.
up for the slack.
But at the high peak season, then you have a surplus of energy. To make that surplus energy used,
Usable.
then polluting factories introduced, like alumni and the steel factories in the upper stream. So we see that negative feedback going on. It's not only energy mix; it's a whole planning. I mean, China is claimed to be, we
Planning.
grow from a planned economy, but the planning is
So
seriously lack.
short-sighted
Yeah,
planning.
right.
Walter, I know you're passionate about water.
Yes.
And China's one major crisis in China is water, 70% undrinkable. What, in your view, is causing that, and what should we do?
Yeah, obviously, water is actually a worldwide problem. I mean, China is much more serious, but just to put it in perspective, okay? United States, we lose about 2.2 trillion gallons of potable water, drinking water, out of our leakage pipelines due to corrosion, and mainly due to corrosion. Now, 2.2 trillion gallons means about $40 billion lost a year. Also means that it can provide potable drinking water to all of the US population for almost 4 months. That's a lot of water. In China, the leakage is even more serious. All right. We have to understand one thing is that yes, pollution, we can go out and see that the air, we can breathe the air, it is polluted. But a lot of things people do ignore and much less sensitive is what is underneath the ground. So what's underneath the ground that we cannot see is buried. But that infrastructure under the ground is just as important, So let me give you an analogy. It's when you plant a tree, root grows in deep. When that root is healthy, then the tree is beautiful. It's healthy. Same kind of the theory. So in China, we right now as a nation, China leaks out about 4.5 trillion gallons of water every year, and a lot of that causes pollution. Why? I give you an example. Underneath the ground, we have all kinds of piping infrastructure. You have potable water, you have sewage, right? Now, sewage right now in China is very common to use concrete pipe. A lot of concrete pipe, massive amount of concrete pipe. Now, when you carry sewage, the sewage creates sulfuric acid.
Corrosion.
Sulfuric acid eats into concrete very quickly. Concrete pipe are buried, called gravity, use gravity to carry sewage. Potable water is buried on top. It's pumped, pressurized. So once that sewage leaks out of the concrete pipe, guess where it goes? It seeps into the ductile iron water pipe on top. Because the ductile iron also corrodes. That's why when you go to the water treatment plant, you take a sample of water. It's by country regulation, you can drink it. But once it's transported to the houses, you cannot drink it. So if we can solve that problem, we can solve a lot of water issues. You know, as she was saying that, you know, it's by just making the right decision, the wise decision, that we can save not only that 4.5 trillion gallons of water, we can lessen the pollution. And at the end of the day, I think people in China, every household can just open the faucet and drink the water out of the faucet.
Marjorie, in your business, you use a lot of water, obviously. What incentive do you have to smartly use and not misuse or waste water? Do you get any incentives from the government, from your business point of view, as well as air, I suppose, but water?
Well, you're making me very depressed because they're already made me very depressed. Now you've made me
even more
depressed
okay.
Because honestly, there's very little incentive from a commercial point of view because water is mispriced.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Water is way underpriced.
Right.
So if a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
manufacturers, they're actually behaving the way they're supposed to be. Because it doesn't make sense for them to
conserve
water. Now, our company happens to have a slightly different philosophy. And because we feel that as human beings, we'd like to live for longer. And so we're conserving water. We're trying to, and we managed to save between 2004 and last year, we've cut about a good 50% of water consumption per unit water consumption. So there's a lot you can do. And we treat about 25,000 tons of water a day. But honestly, if it's only on we have a 100% recycling capability. But the reason we can't really use it is because we would be subsidizing because it's the cost is higher than what we can get water.
Right.
So from a commercial point of view, there's no incentive for others to do it. So it's like we justify it by saying that because there's a feel-good factor in our company, we get some of the best people because everybody is. You get people who cares about the environment, therefore it drives innovation, etc. But those are secondary justifications.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, see if you can ask
see if I can make you feel better.
Even a worse question.
Right. Well, Wang Tao, we talked of incentives and disincentives. Isn't it one of the reasons that we have this problem is because in China's system, local officials, especially, or officials in general, are graded according to how much GDP growth they make instead of how greener they made their own respective.
Well, that's certainly one of the very important factors. And if you think about the GDP growth and local, they probably will account for your investment, your jobs you created, but the pollution may not be able to stay the first day. And the local officials have very strong incentives to create a good economic performance and also try to be held accountable for the pollution they caused years after. So, and at the same time, they also need those jobs and need those industries to create their revenues for the taxations, and then they will be able to do more investment and growth and purchase land. And so this is like a cycle that fade into their own behavior. And I think this is something the central government is trying to break down and by offering different mechanism of financing for the local government.
Yes.
Sorry. Last March during the CCPCC
and
actually, too bad you weren't there. I had a small dinner, and one of the talking about the environment. We had a couple of friends, and one of these is a mayor of a city in Guangdong province. So he said it's very frustrating because he really wants to shut down some of the more polluting
factories.
And so he set a very conservative growth budget for the year. And then when he went into the meetings with the province, he said, well, with that, you will be in the next room. You won't even see the party secretary of the province, right? Because if your growth, everybody is ranked by their growth target. So this guy with his very conservative number is not even in this room. So he said, okay, so I went back, he said, I worked very hard to get higher number. But he said, some of the others coming in order, they feel that they had to get the attention and get resource devoted to them. So those guys were coming in like, he said, crazy. At 14% annual growth, you'd have to be selling your mother. I mean, you're not going to be able to discriminate against any kind of investment. So he was very, I think this is some of the frustrating things that local officials, particularly those who are conscious about the environment, they feel very frustrated. And I think that's very depressing because after a while, then they'll stop trying.
A few years ago, our Time Warner CEO asked me if there's a chance at all that China will clean up the mess. And I told him, I'm sure they will. I said, why do you feel so optimistic? I said, because we breathe the same air, we drink the same water. They cannot hide in a vacuum and live. But I saw him again last June, and he has read a lot of the bad stories and said, Jimmy, you're wrong. It's still bad. And I rarely am wrong about my predictions, but I was wrong this time. Now, this time, with the new leadership, is there a source of optimism that they are serious this time in cleaning the air and cleaning the water? Liu Zhi, I know you've lobbied hard, up and down. Can we make Marjorie a bit more happy?
I actually feel I'm reserved.
You're cautiously optimistic?
Well,
Or pessimistic?
one has to be optimistic, otherwise how can you live?
Right.
But what I've seen, there are several things, like Marjorie just mentioned. There's a whole incentive performance evaluation indicators missing to officials, which is critical. Well, one research I think was done by Singapore University and Tsinghua that they evaluated, they looked at the city party secretary's promotion rate and found it's opposite to their environmental investment in the city.
In other words, the more they invest in the environment, the less they get promoted.
Yeah, right. The more you invest in environment, the less you get promoted. So that has to be changed. It's not up to local officials to change that.
Right. It has to come from Beijing.
Yeah, it has to be from the top. And what I have seen is, on one hand, there is a growing awareness from the society on environment, on care for environment. But there is also growing investment or development rate, the speed. Speed alone, I think, is a problem. When you have accumulated problems, you don't have time to really resolve it, and it becomes unresolvable when you go too fast.
Right.
So then that trend, although we're talking about slowing down the GDP growth, but the actual performance was not evaluated according to that.
Wang Tao.
I think I would just add, this is a very kind of depressive picture we're painting to our audience, and I want to address a little bit.
Please.
It's not all bad, and I think this is something we have to change, and the new leaderships also recognize it. And if you also look at the other picture, if we think about the energy mix, of course coal is the largest, but if you also look at renewables, other alternative energies, China is actually the largest investor of renewables in the world. And also, if you look at specific ones, hydropower, solar PV, wind turbines, and also solar water heaters, and biomass even, They are actually, and geothermal, which is very new to me. If you look at this annual report from, I think it's a third party, international party, China is actually ranking either first, mostly first, or the second in the new investment and new capacities. So they are actually moving fast on all the fronts, and they're trying to solve this. And I think you can see a lot of change in the general public perceptions. We saw a lot of people go on street protesting against certain industries, plan investment, and also the huge pressure from Beijing and other cities about the air quality issues. They all driven the government to change. I think what we really need is actually give them an option, alternatives. For example, like Beijing, what they have in hand in terms of improving the pollution. Beijing is actually using only less than a quarter of the coal in the total energy mix. It's very different to the national level. It's very clean, but they still want to phase out more of the coal. But instead, renewable is not going to be match enough the faster speed they need time. So what they come out with is natural gas. And natural gas itself is also pollution, but it's cleaner. But also, that also causes a problem of the supply security. Beijing, the central government is very concerned about the security of the energy supply. That is probably top concern, other than the environment concern. And
You feel better now, Marjorie?
I'm waiting for Walter.
Okay, Walter.
I make you feel really bad.
No, because you were going to say something.
Yes, Walter, go ahead. Weigh in.
I think there is a tremendous hope in this country in terms of, I think, leadership's point of view of consciousness, sensitivity to the environment. I mean, we went through a really industrial revolution in China, and we are coming out of that revolution that we are getting to a platform of maturity. Okay, why I say that? Because, for example, 3 years ago, I really started to just invest in China, just 3 years ago. It's not very long. And when I went to various places to 考察, okay, to look at the various places, they want to understand what product I am producing. Does it cause pollution? For example, they ask me, you utilize a lot of water. Yes, I do. But 100% of my water is recycled through the heat exchanger to bring down the heat, and all recycled. So they do care about that, your investment, is it polluting? So that concept is changing. And by the way, okay, I in the United States, I deal with water municipalities almost every day. Every day I deal with water municipalities, all right? Today, LA DWP, all right, LA Department of Water and Power, which is the biggest water agency in the United States of America, still refuses to use innovative piping product. They still refuse, they only use ductile iron. They still use product that's used 60, 70, 80 years ago.
Why?
Why? Because they refuse to change. If it's not broken, don't fix it. And again, when pipe is buried, you don't know.
Right.
Depending on the soil condition, if the soil condition is high soil content, the ductile iron corrodes within 5 to 7 years. So, but in China right now, as I speak to the water agencies, they want to relook at new products. And by the way, water is cheap everywhere. United States, water is very cheap too.
Definitely.
Okay,
Relatively cheap.
So,
Underpriced.
So
Underpriced.
I think there's a tremendous hope as long as we, as what we do our part as a business, that we introduce new products, we push in new products, and we need to have numbers to back it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think there's
The bottom
tremendous
line.
hope in the near future of China in terms of water.
Marjorie, what should China, or what can China learn from the experiences of other countries, the US, LA? LA cleaned its air 30 years ago, or starting 30 years ago. Are there one or two things that you think China could learn and make a difference in China?
You could also ask the questions that maybe China should learn what not to do.
Including that, yeah, negative and
And I
positive.
think some of the problem is caused by
Lifestyle.
sort of an imitation of the development model that is, I like to pick on the chemists because I have a lot of friends who are biologists. I think that the Industrial Revolution is very successful and because of advancement in chemistry, which also caused a lot of pollution. So the biologists are obviously going to save the day. So there's a lot that I think China can leapfrog
How about a car society that we are
Well,
now?
a zip car, why do we have to own a car? I mean, we're talking about de-assetization. I mean, young people, they don't want to own anything. Why are we still stuck with this development model that a status in life is to have a car, have your own car, and
a big house.
And a big house. I mean, I think maybe we can leapfrog. I think what we should do is stop dreaming the American dream and think of a dream that is more an internet, a global internet dream that is much more sustainable.
Lu Zhi, what is Chinese dream for you? For you. Yeah, because I know there are a billion dreams.
I was actually interviewed by CCTV the other day. I was asking about the same question. I said my dream doesn't have a boundary of any nation. It's true. Actually, I've been working on the Tibetan Plateau these years. I was surprised by, Tibetan people living on the plateau are not rich. But it's a general perception that only when you are wealthier could you care for environment. But these people living on the plateau, they're not wealthy, but they care for environment because they have different beliefs. Different value system can really produce different results. Actually, when I asked one of the old ladies who was praying what she was praying for, and she said, world peace and a better future for human beings. Not for the children, her own children or her family get wealthier or better to do. These people actually enlightened me, I think, a lot. That also give me a hope to human nature. That if these people can, when they're not wealthy, care for environment, care about other beings, live together in harmony, why not others? However, this tradition, this cultural value is also being influenced by outside westernized lifestyle as well. So that's what we are working on. I think ultimately to save the environment is to change people. Yeah. People's heart.
Along the same line, I think these people have a lot of self-respect. So what we're trying to do, one of the problems is that industry is an area of a big problem area. Well, the first thing you need to do is to talk to, we talk to our colleagues, our workers and our managers, supervisors have got to start to build a sense of pride and that I'm somebody special. Because if you don't have that sense that I am special, you put up with, because with pollution, the first person that stands to suffer is yourself, as well as the children, your children who live in that environment. So it is important that we build up a strong sense of respect and a sense of pride. And that's what Lu Zhi and I have been trying to do, is that we want to promote this concept that saving the environment is not for a retail brand who is going to buy from my factory. It's because we breathe the air and we deserve better air quality. So we feel that we are going to be the key driver for any kind of improvement. And we shouldn't be blaming the government or the outside world. We should be just take on the ownership and do things. And there's a lot of things we can do without, there's a lot of systemic improvements, but there are also little things that everyone can do.
Like what? We can share with our audience. I know Lu Zhi spoke about the refrigerator, use of refrigerator. What else can individuals do?
Well, I'll give you one example that is sort of a bigger example, but in our company, we sell fabric to our own garment factories. So one kid who decided that instead of shipping fabric, traditionally fabric is shipped by length. He said, this is silly. We will now ship by the same diameter because that would save packaging material as well as saving transportation cost. That's something that just one guy thought of, but I don't remember exactly how much, but saved packaging material, saved transportation. So that's just one person. Another is some guy bought a air quality machine measurement. It cost about 100,000 only. He started measuring air quality in the office. Now that prompted me to invest in a much more sophisticated set of air quality measurement equipment. And now everybody in the factory space is looking for areas, localized areas of improvement for air quality, which then prompted the local government. This is the first time the local government has published PM 2.5 got really bad in the place where we are. And it was the first time that it was published. So the government also had the courage to, they jumped in as well. So little things that one person does can have a very positive ripple effect that also leads to the local government joining in, because now the local government doesn't feel that everybody would pointing finger at them, but instead be together to try to resolve these problems. So transparency, and we also now partner with Guangdong Environmental Department. Our water treatment factory is now publishing real-time data. So little things, and I can give you a lot of little things that our colleagues have done. But
interesting. No, I think the solutions vary from top to bottom and from big to small. Now, at the same time, this problem goes beyond China's borders, right? China's pollution gets blown over South Korea, even Japan or LA, and they complain. Wang Tao, the climate change issue is the elephant in the room. Is China under pressure to do more, do faster to address this issue?
Yes, I think China is certainly under huge pressure from international communities to do more. But I think this is also very important for us to understand China's concern and also decision makings. I think I have a great sympathy when our lunchtime speakers, Mr. Couture, talk about when President Obama and President Xi Jinping met. They actually spent the first hour talking about their domestic concern. And that could not be more right for China, because the domestic concern is the number one. And they are trying to use this international community's pressure to propel some of the changes badly needed in its own industry and also economic growth. And China needs to use that to maybe build much more sustainable industries and transit from coal-dominated energy mix to much more balanced and sustainable and renewable dominated in the future. And this is something I think China will be ready in the next few years to play an even bigger role in the international stage. But I think so far we have to respect the huge concern in the domestic issue. If you really try to understand how China makes the decisions, you will understand that even for their climate policy, for their climate negotiations, and even for their acquisitions in overseas, in Africa, in South America, they are all serving the domestic concerns. The first one is energy supply, Chinese oil. So Chinese government has a huge concern on the back of their mind, how they're going to continue to secure the supply. And even for coal, that is not as much as China needed. I mean, China is also become the world's largest coal importer in the world. So first priority for them, energy security. And the second thing is actually reduce the reliance on coal and improving the environmental issues, improving the environmental qualities. And that also comes with a price, because why coal is so widely used in China is because of the cheap abundance, and then offers China the competitiveness of the industry. But if you are going to change that, if you're going to change the source of the energy, and together with increasing of cost of the land, of the labor, the competitiveness that China enjoyed for the last 3 decades to build China's economic miracle may not be the same thing. So they have to find a new drive that will be able to maintain the competitiveness of the Chinese economy. So this transition is not as easy as many people wish it. But I think they are taking the steps and trying to make the change.
I mean, the question is, should China grow fast now and clean up later?
No, that is not an answer or option anymore. I think people already got quite fed up with the current situation.
You think there is now growing realization?
I think, yeah, in general, the awareness, as I said, is growing rapidly, also due to the crisis, environmental crisis, and that lead to health issue directly. However, I do see that this, the trajectory will still slide up to a point. Maybe next 20, even 30 years, we're still going along the same line, if not worse.
If not worse.
Yeah, I think the worst time has not come yet.
Oh,
that's my analysis.
your prediction. That's bad news.
I agree with
Marjorie.
that, but I don't think we will have another 20 years. That is probably too long for China.
Okay, let's have a bet.
Well, I'm not that pessimistic. I think there's so much. See, I think the Chinese are very clever. So if they see, especially in industry, right now is because I think they're very ignorant. They think that this is the only way. For example, in my industry, the textile industry, they just think that they haven't seen another model. So, and what we're trying to do is to feature other models. So, like, we've recently been asked by Guilin government, who just celebrated the 40th anniversary of Deng Xiaoping's Lijiang 讲话, and which emphasizes the importance of the environment. And we're going to try and develop a showcase. And I've been getting so much support from the local authority that I'm really very encouraged. And also, we have been getting, in fact, I've made a lot of friends in local governments. That's why I know some of the frustration, because I think they are people.
They're aware.
Many of them have that concern and want to do something, and I think they encourage us because if we can show that you can make money by being environmentally, so we get featured. Esquel is not a public company. It's not a very sexy company, but very often we get picked to be showcased because we are making money when a lot of the other textile players are having financial difficulties. So we see a lot of comrades in arms and supporting this. So I don't think we have 20, 30 years. And I think that would really. Actually, I'm old enough that I think I can live with that.
Now that Marjorie has been lifted from her depression, I'll open the floor to questions from the audience, please. You are welcome to challenge our pessimism or optimism.
Read somewhere at the Shanxi.
So you're saying you're from
Shanxi, right? Yeah, they actually are largest importer of the coal, right? But they actually have trouble selling the coal they produce. So what is the problem? It's because of cost or quality of the coal they produce. I might be wrong. Somewhere it's
Sorry,
read on
can
the
you
plane.
repeat your question? You said they have
山西的煤不能用，
又是进口最大的进口，然后
他自己本身的煤，他本身的煤。
Shanxi is the largest importer of coal.
Yeah. Why is that?
That's probably not the statistic I would have. I think.
a major importer.
I think the major importer of Chinese of coal to China is actually the coast provinces like Guangdong and Shanghai, maybe to that areas, because That is not because of lack of coal. It's because the transportation of coal is so difficult to moving the coal from Xinjiang or Inner Mongolia or Shanxi to them. The capacity is so limited. So the price also can increase so much because of the transportation bottleneck. But also the quality of the coal from, for example, Indonesia and Australia are way better. So they can actually enjoy much better economy using importing coal. But I do share that it's a big problem since she's selling the coal out. And actually because the economy is actually slowing down for the last year, and a lot of the coal users actually start to not really need that much coal. So they have big problems selling coal, and then the situation become even worse because the air pollution problems now in Beijing. Every city, everywhere is talking about reducing coal and transiting to gas. And there is something also ironic. The coal producer always wants to sell the coal. And because everyone wants to transfer to gas, like Beijing wants to use gas, and Hebei wants to use gas, and they don't really have enough gas, so they actually rely on importing gas, but then it's expensive. So what is another option being taken by the coal producer is actually using a technology called coal to gas. It's kind of converting through a series of chemical reactions, converting coal to synthesis gas, but not exactly natural gas, but could be comparative. And then use that as a way to clean the air qualities. But the problem is that this process is hugely water consuming.
Yeah.
And it uses a lot of water. And remember, those areas are very dry, and they can take up maybe almost the whole water from Yellow River if they really made all these projects coming. So we're actually creating new environment problem to solve another environment problems. And that is not the way actually for us to move forward. I think we have to jump out of this short-sighted solution seeking.
And that's an example of how we can leverage scientific and technological innovation to solve our environmental crisis. We have a question from the audience written here. China is currently experiencing some of the world's biggest environmental challenges. Usually in other countries, when there is a challenge, domestic innovation jumps to solve the problems. For instance, cheap consumer-focused air filters, low consumption household water purifying systems. Why haven't we seen more local innovation? All the proposals we have stated are still largely systemic and macro, like shutting down coal plants. What about the small-scale, consumer-oriented clean tech solutions? What are the barriers to the Chinese domestic innovation on this front? Good question.
Bring back David Yuan.
Oh, okay. He's the one?
He could answer that.
He could answer that.
They invest in a lot of Chinese startups that are doing innovations of that kind. So,
but obviously this crisis spells opportunity, right? Business opportunity.
Definitely.
right.
Right.
I think Jamie actually, and end of the last session mentioned that, the industry should watch for is actually the industry will provide people drinkable water and also breathable air. And actually this is a growing market. Many of the people actually in those sectors are eyeing on this sector.
Walter, are you one of them? Aren't you thinking of investing on domestic innovation?
In terms of water, there are a massive amount of innovation in the last 20, 25 years. For example, in irrigation, just give everybody knows this. I think you have drip irrigation, right? So the water doesn't when you irrigate a farm, right? If you sprinkle it, a lot of water evaporates.
Right.
When you drip irrigation, you actually save a lot of water. That's one innovation that it could have been more widely used. It should be more widely used in China. It's not enough. But I think more importantly is that I think China, as we know, we have regulations. We do have regulations. So for example, we have regulations of how many ppm pollution you cannot let out, government, industry, all the industry have regulations. But the problem with to make sure that that regulation is met is there's not enough government agencies to police it.
Not enough? I thought there were too many policing it.
There are not enough. They may look the other way, or they don't really follow the protocol to regulate the industries. Okay, so obviously, as a manufacturer myself, yes, you can cut a lot of costs out. Not recycling the water, just dump the water out in the river and so forth and so on, and release your carbon dioxide, whatever. But if there's enough regulation, then you should have follow through with people who really audit the plants, the manufacturing sites. So make sure that the owners, the business owners are accountable.
Marjorie.
On that, there's too much regulation and there's too little regulation. What I mean is, first of all, government does not have good statistics. So for example, in the textile industry, the standard they give for dyeing operation, they include yarn dyeing and piece dyeing, and they put it in the same category. But these are two very different operations. So the standards are not very well set. That's why another one of our very good friends, MARJORIE, Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs, promotes more transparency. So we publish on our website the statistics. Now, you have to build up a lot of trust within the community. So you need a community of people who are very devoted to this. So Professor Hao Li and MARJORIE, all these people are advocating a green supply chain. So everybody share statistics, because in order for government to be a good regulator, they must also be informed of what are the appropriate standards. And then they can, and also we could start to self-regulate, because people can also help. There are some NGOs, I think the National Resource Development, I always get the initials mixed up, who are providing help, just as MARJORIE's group. They will provide assistance to people who are violating the standards. So this is happening.
Yeah, I think if innovators follow money, there's a lot of business to do in terms of air purifiers. I think they've been doing very good business in Beijing in the past few months. You know, selling at $1,000 or even more, because people are desperate for clean air. Here's another question from Wang Tao. No, not you. Another. Oh, I'm not sure if it's directed to you or from Wang Tao. Is the U.S. shale gas boom an option in China? I think maybe it's directed to you.
Yeah.
Meaning, do you see shale gas as possible in China given the vast resources here?
I think that's a very popular question that's being asked, and many people have very high expectation on that. I think we have to be concerned about three things. The first is the figure of China's shale gas reserve is only estimate, so we don't really have that accurate statistical figure. So as just Marjorie said, we need to actually do the exploration first and make sure that we do have that. Secondly, it's quite difficult for China to replicate the success in U.S. Because first, geographically, the shale gas in China is buried even deeper, and the case is much more difficult to be drilled out than U.S. And also, it's in the mountain areas rather than in the plain, so the cost will be way higher. Secondly, the water resources is similar. The current technology to use the shale gas to drilling shale gas requires a huge amount of water and also causes environmental concerns even in U.S. And that is a big concern in China because we don't really have that much water in those areas, and the contamination would be very bad.
But it's going on, right? I mean,
yes, but there is a chance.
They are doing that.
Sichuan is already have exploration, I think. But what I have heard is actually the outcome is not so far so promising. But there is a very good hope in there that if U.S. could continue to prove this successful and continue to actually generate more shale gas, they will become, as IEA actually predicted, by the time of 2020, become world's largest gas producer and even exporter. They probably will not be able to export the gas to China, but they will export the gas to Asia. to South Korea, to Japan, and to India because they have certain agreements, the liberal trading agreement. And that will help to reduce the price of the natural gas market and also improve the supply. And for China, that is definitely good because then they will have much more stronger position in bargaining the contracts with either Middle East or Russia. Or other new sources. So that is certainly a good thing for China to look at. But I do also hope China will be able to get the technology one day. But I don't think we need to rush for it.
Can I jump into
Yes,
that?
please.
I think shale gas, yes, he's absolutely right. The China's shale gas formation is 2 to 3 times deeper than the United States. But I think if China can change its business model, shale gas exploration will be very successful. What I mean by that, in the United States, shale gas exploration is done by many small companies. It is a lot of drillers, it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. Look at Texas alone, right? Within 5 square miles, there may be 5,000 wells, all drilled by different companies. So if the China can adapt to that and let it free, let it open, and let people go and, different small companies or medium-sized companies go drill the shale gas, it will be much more successful. Why? Because the cost will be much lower, rather than having a huge company do the drilling.
Yeah, and it's not open yet in China.
No.
Questions? Yes.
I don't get paid.
You'll get paid double.
Okay.
So much for your excellent participation. Many of you have written questions, have given us suggestions for these topics, even in our planning stage. And I want you to give your warmest applause for such an excellent discussion here today on a very important topic. And I'd like to introduce again, to bring to the podium, our esteemed Chairman Dominic Ng to close the program today.
Again, thanks to the panelists and for a wonderful session again. And so we now conclude the conference session, and we will have gala dinner. Reception started at 5:30, so happy hour is coming soon. So after that, I think the dinner program officially starts at 7 p.m. So we're looking forward to every one of you who are joining the dinner tonight. And I know that we're going to have a wonderful program this evening with Governor Zhou Xiaochuan being our keynote speaker. So looking forward to see you this evening. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.